It is disgusting, derogatory. It is literally one of the most undermining things that you can ever do. You violate yourself so much. So from the ages of 18 to 21, I was in the adult industry. My name is Samantha Browne, and this is how I So, my name is Samantha Browne, I am 33 and I am a proud Northerner from Manchester. I think growing up, my household was a loving one, but it was very, very dysfunctional. And now I realise that because of growing up in a broken home and being around a lot of that dysfunction, it really distorted my view of my childhood, and I seen a lot more of the destruction than I did the love. And one of my first early experiences was when I was on the stairs, when I heard my parents shouting, screaming at each other. I heard things being smashed downstairs, and I just remember crying on the stairs. And I think because of this social construct that we have, where you must have a mum, a dad, a picketed fence, it's all like the Brady Bunch. My family wasn't like that. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty shit. And I think as a 10, 11-year-old kid, that's when my world started to go. Where I was born, first, people might know this little area called Moss Side. I was brought up in the good old Gunchester, and from the ages of 0 to 5, that's where I was. And it's quite funny because I remember when my dad used to take me to city matches off Princess Road. We had the main road right next to us. Come on, you Blues. And and I also remember outside the kids being really naughty and being like, if you park on this street, we're going to watch your car for you. And it's like, you know what I mean? If you don't want us to watch it, then someone might have it. And I laugh because people were just trying to make a bit of money. Do you know what I mean? Hustling's been happening since day, and these little kids know no different. But if you didn't get it watched, you might end up with rocks on your car. So yeah, from the age of 0 to 5, I lived there, and then I moved to a place called Chadderton. Bit of a It's predominantly Caucasian area. I was probably one of the 4 black people in my school. There was predominantly Asian and Caucasian people. So I think it's fair to say I was a bit confused. Do you know what I mean? Trying to straighten my hair from day. There was obviously this distinct understanding that I was different to other people. And I think they made it a bit clear as well, because obviously, like the early 90s, there was a bit more low-key racism going on, like, do you know what I mean? So I guess I would get called derogatory terms because for some reason, these boys that I used to grow up with used to think that girls who had a darker complexion had darker private parts. So that would get brought up a few times. And yeah, even now it makes me feel uncomfortable, because it's like, how ignorant are you? Like, you know, and like, how derogatory are you to be talking about things like that? But this is what it is. And I was growing up around young boys who, I guess, you know, the old your mum jokes would come out every 2 seconds. I hung about with some kids, you know, I probably shouldn't have. You know, I was around, I guess, a bit of gang rivalry, which was post-Cold War. It's quite funny. Well, it's funny now because it wasn't really the Bloods and the Crips, do you know what I'm saying? Running at each other going, yeah, this is my area. And there was a bridge that like took us apart. But one thing that I did, because I started hanging about with older people, there was this part where one of my friends was selling drugs, and he was only 15. And, you know, looking back now, that was criminal exploitation. Like, who's selling drugs to a 15-year-old boy? Like, we used to walk around, I used to think I was well cool, because obviously I was smoking weed from a young age as well, like, add that into it. I was smoking weed from the ages of 12, and I also ended up drinking on the streets as well with a lot of these people who I went to school with. I mean, we even went back at dinner time and used to get drunk and used to go back into school. Rebels. But you know what, like, I really didn't like school. I thought school was a test of my memory, and I was more of a kinesthetic learner, so I really liked things like PE and food tech and drama. I love a bit of drama, and I was wagging school, mate. Like, I was not in most of my lessons. I was really bad. Sorry, Dad, I forged your signature a few times to get out of school. So where we lived when I was growing up was a rundown house. It was sad because, like, obviously, like, looking back now, it gets me emotional because I just think my mum and dad, you know, they were trying their best, but we didn't have carpet. We had a screwdriver as a handle. It was like we brought Moss Side to Chad it in, mate. You know, I was on dinner tickets, you know, single parent being raised, you know, like that kind of lifestyle. In the house was run down. Like, we had like 3 bedrooms, but it was run down, and yeah. It was all right, the area though, like, you know, if I think about it now, like, it wasn't Moss Side, do you know what I'm saying? And as much as I'm going on about these little postcode wars and stuff, like, it wasn't, like, extremely dodgy. But I guess, yeah, growing up, I was a bit in the low demographic kind of section, and my house reflected that. I think growing up, it was, like, quite apparent that I was on the lower scale of financial income. We had less money than other people. Unfortunately, when my mum and dad broke up, my dad had the house, but my dad also got left with arrears from the old house that we had in Moss Side. And then my mum, because she ended up having to go to the council. I remember us going to the first house that she got, and she was sleeping on a mattress, and she'd actually bought us beds. And my mum used to sacrifice food for us so we could eat, and instead of her eating, and I didn't know that at the time, but, like, my mum at one point, you know, would live on a small block of cheese, and we would go and see her on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and she'd have food ready for us, you know. And I think you just don't notice at the time. And I think, again, like, being a kid, you're just like, why is my life different to everyone else's? Like, why is my life not this perfect life, what I've been told in a Disney movie, what it's meant to be, do you know what I mean? Like, why am I different to everyone else? Like, it just all got really overwhelming, I won't lie. And I think that's when I turned into a rebel with a cause in school. I had a job at Home Bargains. Wow. Bloody hell. So yeah, that I thought I was, like, on the ball, mate. I was loving it. Obviously, like, I was doing naughty things like going out clubbing, and before the age of 18. I know there's a few people that would have done that who watch this show. So don't judge me. But that's another thing why we have to be careful nowadays, because you don't know who's in the club, you know, like with the young people that are going in now and the way they're looking, it's scary, man. But either way, like, I was in that group of people as well, you know, trying to act older than my age kind of thing. So basically, when I was 16, I met this lady, and I was introduced to her by my school friends. They were called Jackie and Charlotte. So I was introduced to this lady called Becky. And when they introduced me, like, you know, they were like, oh, this is an older lady. She's quite cool. She drives, you know, and she lives with this lady called Vicky at the time. And yeah, it was mad. Me and my friends would go around, and before, like, you know, I really got to know this lady, it was made out that she was the stripper. So things started to get weird, yeah. So, like, she started to strip for us and stuff. Like, obviously we're like 16, 15 years old. one of my friends was, and she started to strip for us and show us all her clothes. And it was a bit weird because obviously like we'd never really seen girls being naked in our face. So me and my friends were just like, I guess like giggling schoolgirls, like, oh, this is very weird. Like, and looking back now, it's very weird. Like, who dances for a 16-year-old kid, do you know what I mean, and puts their tits in their face? And yeah, she was showing me her outfits. Me being the, you know, I guess the confident 16-year-old that I wanted to try them on. So I wanted to try her stripper outfits on. And looking back now, realising with this lady, she then started to buy me pizza, she started to buy me weed, she started to be like, come and stay at my house. Then she got her own house, so she wasn't staying with this lady Vicky anymore. Then she started to take me out with armed robbers and people who were gangsters. And I had my first line of cocaine with this lady when I was 17. And now I know what was happening was grooming. At the time, I didn't have a clue. Now, if you think about it, yeah, like when you were 16 years old, think about like how influenced you were. Think about like, this is why I talk about like the influences today with the young people. And she was my best friend. So she was influencing me on a massive scale, like, you know, having a nice lifestyle, like making sure that I was thinking about having the finer things in life, you know, and also objectifying myself. At the time, I didn't think it was, but now I know it was. Well, you're gonna go around to gangsters' houses, let them sniff lines off your ass. Like, honestly, I think now of little Sam, and it's sad because even if I questioned what was happening, I still went ahead with it. And that's why, again, I take full responsibility. But all I ask of people who are watching is think about when you were 16 and 17 and think about how impressionable you were. Think about the situations that you put yourself in. And I know that a lot of people will be able to relate to this because a lot of people would have had that influence when they were younger to act older, and we have that now as well. And this woman, then when I was 17, spoke to me and was like, oh yeah, Sam. Now, by the way, this woman, by the way, was very narcissistic, very controlling. I didn't realize at the time what a narcissist was. Like, none of us really knew about that terminology back then, but she was very manipulative, very controlling, very much like as soon as she beeps outside the door, I had to be out there, and if I left her any minutes, whoa. But she was also influencing me where she'd be like, oh, let's get topless in the car now, Sam, while we drive down to London. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. What? Who does that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I was around all of this, and then it was like a slowly, do you know what I mean, over the year, telling me then when I was 17 years old that she was a prostitute. You won't judge me, Sam. You know, you're not gonna be affected by what I say. And you know what? I think you'll be really good at it. Great. So Sam, then, little Sam, thought that it was normal to sell herself, to have sex unprotected at the age of 17, going around with this older lady, thinking that it was normal to be a sex object. And I am blown away now to think how I was coerced to thinking that this was normal behaviour. And that is why I do care so much now about the younger generation, because they are so highly influenced to be a sexual object. So at the age of 17, I was around the UK thinking it was normal to have guys pay me. And, you know, I was dressing up as a schoolgirl with this lady. Sorry, it makes me feel funny now, like thinking about it. And it wasn't long before, again, full responsibility, I was in the adult industry and I took that path myself. So if you think about it, 17, home bargains, EMA in the pocket, or come, I'll show you about this lifestyle. Now, not only did she get me doing prostitution bareback with her, she also introduced me to a show called Babe Station. Ironic that we like to be called Babe up north. But this show, for anyone that doesn't know, is a sad show where sad men call and think that you want to talk to them for £3.99 a minute. No one wants to talk to you guys. I'm going to hit it hard to you right now. Like, no one on that phone wants to speak to you. They want the money to be racked in. And from 17, I remember they didn't ask me for any ID. Now, luckily, the channel was called Hotel Voyeur, and luckily that channel's been closed down now. But think about it. They asked me for no ID. They didn't ask me about how old I was. They didn't ask me nothing. They just assumed that because I was with this lady that I was above age. So I'm 17, on the bed, shaking the phone like you do. And I remembered what the first conversation that I had on the phone was with a man. Man's whispering. I was like, hi. And I'm like, he's whispering. She's like, I'll just talk to him because I was on the bed with this lady. And he was like, my wife's in bed. And I was like, what? I was like, oh my God. I was panicking. I was like, his wife's in bed. Like, you know, and also like, the whole family unit was being shattered as I got into this industry, because I was like, wow. Unfortunately, they are playing a lot on men's weaknesses, and as we know, sex sells. But how worrying is it to know that you was talking to a minor on a show, having sex chat? This is where the adult industry gets very dark, because people don't realise that because you're controlled by your sexual urges, you don't even know and don't even comprehend most of the time what you're doing. So when I got into this industry and I was on this Hotel Voyeur 17, and I was like, oh, do I get paid £50 an hour to get my tits out? You know, get paid £100 an hour to have sex unprotected? Or do I work at Home Bargains for £6.99 an hour, get my EMA? Well, I think it's fair to say, again, I took the dark road and I objectified myself. I thought that what I was doing was okay, what I was doing was normal, well, my best friend was doing it, so f what anyone else thought. I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell him anything, because if I told him, he would have tried to stop me. That wouldn't have ended well. So I told him that I was going to London to model. However, my mum knew, and I don't think it was the best option to support me with my choices looking back now, but what can you really do? Your kid's going to tell you they're going to do something, you're going to disown them, or you're going to support them. And yeah, my mum supported me to the point of telling everyone what I was doing. Oh my God, talk about a cheerleader in every sense, bless her. So, the adult industry, ladies and gents, is possibly one of the worst industries I can ever explain. It is disgusting, derogatory. It is literally one of the most undermining things that you can ever do. You violate yourself so much. So, from the ages of 18 to 21, I was in the adult industry. There was a lot of dark parts, you know. I picked up like the biggest cocaine addiction. And I think a lot of the sad times was when I would be sat up sniffing coke, you know, listening to Amy Winehouse by myself, thinking that she was a cruel person. And honestly, if I would have stayed in that industry, I probably would have ended up like her. I was just in such a bad way. And I think just some of the worst situations were things that I suppressed, like seeing some of the situations that I saw, basically putting myself through so much pain physically, like having these people violate me. Most of the best stuff was happening when the camera wasn't rolling, because guess what? Like when it's rolling, no one wants a 12-inch in their kidneys, mate. Like no one wants that. Like, and it's like that when you're doing a scene, you're not doing it normal. You're doing it sideways for the camera. So think about what the actress feels like, you know, like not that most people are thinking about that anyway, but it's just something to think about. And I think the reason I know now about the mental impact of it is because of everything that happened and how I've been able to look into the psychology of how this works and how this is a pure addiction, like, and how they are promoting it in every way. Like, I think on TikTok now, they're promoting sugar babies, OnlyFans, like, what the actual, like, do you know that 96% of the child abuse images have been reported from Facebook? Like, this is the world that we are living in now, like to the point of where the whole social media world is controlled by sex as well. And this has always been, like I said, I've always been fascinated with people and psychology anyway. So after I got out of the industry, like, and I do what I do today, like I couldn't hide away from it. I had to see why these guys were so addicted to the point of where they were paying for me to piss on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit weird. And I was one of the leading black actresses in the adult industry. I was the next Charmaine Sinclair. I was the big bollocks of the industry, yeah. And that shows you what the reason that I'm telling you that is because I was on the up scale, like, you know, the courtesan scale of the adult industry. I wasn't on some couch like for 20 quid, you know what I mean? Like on like your homemade movies. I was getting flew to private islands. I was staying behind the Hollywood sign. You know, I was, you know, jet setting to other countries. Like, I won a fucking award, mate, honestly. And, you know, I was on Page 3. I was seen as, you know, I was in all the lad mags. I was seen as this commodity. I shot for the best companies, you know, some of the bigger names like Harmony, Private, Playboy, you know. It's all scummy. Every single part of it. It's actually disgusting. And the first company I worked for, Kilogram, there was a pimp working in there. Like, there was an actual pimp. And now, luckily, like, I didn't get involved with this man. But this is what you have to understand. There is so much darkness around the adult industry. And what this company, Kilogram, would do, they would befriend you. They do the whole, like, oh, you're part of the family. Even introduce you to their kids, mate. And then before you know it, they're trying to get you to up your levels for £50 more. So if you think about, like, in the scale of Jenna Jameson, if you got her first scene, you would be wadded, because everyone would have her first content and everyone wants to see the first scene. Why? I don't know. The whole innocent and pure thing, again, freaks me out, yeah. But what they did was manipulate you to think that you're part of a nice little family unit, when really all they want for you is to bleed you dry of every single scene. They want you anal, they want you DP, they want a lot of it off you, and they want to just give you an extra £50. Now, don't get it twisted, whether you're selling yourself for 50 quid or you're selling yourself for a few grand, who cares? You're still selling your body, yeah? But in the industry itself, no one was telling you about how to make the most out of your money. You were just getting raped on in every way. Like, you wanted to get bled dry. They wanted to use you and abuse you. And, you know, some of the things that I didn't have to do, that I chose to do, I had no self-respect. I had no care for my whole body. I pushed myself to do things. I remember seeing girls shit themselves after being battered by like 5 guys, like after I had fucking been told I had to do my first anal scene, and I was so scared. And I remember like I was there and I was so scared and I was in so much pain, and my guy goes, don't worry, I'm going to do something. The guy asphyxiated me to the point of where I passed out. And I just think sometimes now that movie's out there of me. People are getting their rocks off to me being choked out to the point of where I passed out. Like, people don't understand, like, in the industry, like, there's things called enemas where you have to fucking douche before you have these things. Like, you're not allowed to eat the day before. This is an exit hole, not an entry hole. Like, why do people think jamming things inside of it is going to, like, be able to do anything? Like, people have got anal tears, people are shitting and they're sneezing at 20 years old because they can't cope with what they're putting their body through. And this is getting fucking normalized. If you think about it, like, I've had to pray, like, for forgiveness so much about this, because I have played an incest role. I've played a fucking schoolgirl. Like, it's actually disgusting to think that this industry is normalized. Like, and you have to understand, like, I will sit at a round table with any girl or man in the industry, because let me tell you now, by the end of it, the guys are injecting their pieces because they can't get it up no more either. Like, this is one of the most worthless industries you can ever be involved in. And I don't care, like, I will stand as an advocate that everyone deserves their human rights, but you basically take away part of your human rights when you start to get involved in that industry, because you need to realize that if you're not going to do it, then someone else is going to do it. So they're trying to push you on every single level to make sure that you get exactly what it is. And the violence that's involved now with the adult industry. I work for someone called Rocco Siffredi. Like, they've made a friggin' Netflix documentary about this psycho, mate. My God made this girl shave her head in the film. Like, and then I honestly, I fucking seen that girl get raped. Like, I know I did. Because I know what that, basically, like, when you're in the industry and you push like this, but that means stop, because you need to take a minute. My guy didn't stop. Like, he was choking her, like her eyes were popping to the back of her head, and apparently this is consent. Like, what the actual hell are we pushing on our kids? And I think the reason that I speak so much about the adult industry is people need to understand it's free for a reason. You are the commodity. They are pushing this on you so that you in your own head, you're violated. Like, the amount of stress that comes from watching a movie, people don't even realize, like, the gray matter in your amygdala, the way your stress is managed, is increased. So when you're watching this, not only are you cut off from the actual meaning of a consensual relationship, you then start to think that it's normal to have these things. And when you're not stimulated by these things anymore, guess what comes next? Even harder stuff, mate. Like, I don't care, yeah, dress up like a dog and bark down the road, yeah, but why can't we leave this to people's imagination? Because I'm telling you, what porn is doing is taking them to the darkest, deepest sides. And that is why we have things like the dark web as well. If you think about, like, how I might have been imitating it, but there's kids going missing every day to this industry. And that's what we need to start realizing. Like, is this really what we want for our future generations? The way this industry works, it's very psychological, and they will keep you coming back for more. And one thing that we don't want to be pushing more of in this world is sex. Like, in regards to our limitations, like, why do you have to be battered? Like, why do you have to have two things in one hole? Like, that's abuse, mate. Like, and I don't get it twisted. Like, I know some people are into some stuff, but what that does is it distorts the view of a consensual relationship, a loving consensual relationship. And that's why I get so upset, because I didn't know what that was. I was fucking, I hadn't even had a fucking orgasm, for sake, in the industry. That shows you exactly how fake it is. There's nothing real about it whatsoever. And I think one of the worst things, you know, is the scenes that I've done when I know that I've acted out some of them roles, I just think to myself, like, you know, like, that's how much they shut you off to think calling someone daddy is fucking normal. And it's not normal whatsoever. It's disgusting and it's degrading. And I'll never, ever, ever say, I will never big this up, like, ever. Like, I can't. Like, I've done all of it. Webcamming, page free, that babe station, porn, I've done it all. And there isn't one part of it that is liberating. I've been a stripper, like, I've done it all. There isn't one part of it. Like, people be like, oh yeah, but we're taking the money off the guys. Let me ask you a question. Take the money away, would you still do it? No. And that is how you know how soul destroying this is. And that is why it is so important that we share this message, because young boys need to know about this, but also young girls. Like, we need to know what we're representing here right now. And to me, the adult industry is the devil. So the message that I would ask of people is to ask the question, if that was your kid, would you be happy with what they were doing? And if that is the case, then why are you okay to watch it, knowing that is someone else's kid? Like, does it not make you think what you're doing to yourself? And, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, like Lauryn Hill says, like, don't be a hard rock when you really are a gem, and don't hate me because I'm just genuine. Every single person who's involved in the industry, think about what you're doing. And most of all, like, think about what it would be to love yourself, because if you did love yourself, what kind of actions would you take? Because I know that if that was the case, not only would you not go and do that, you wouldn't go and watch it either, because you would have that love and respect inside of yourself to know what is real and what is not. From the ages of 21 to 23, that's when shit got really dark for me. And the same woman that introduced me to the adult industry and being a prostitute, she also introduced me to a man. He at first come across as a very lovely person, someone who was going to change our world, and he was introduced to me as a gangster from Becky, someone who was going to make sure that for the rest of our lives would be sorted. You know, he was a special person. And I didn't realise at the time I was being massively honeypotted to being human trafficked by a Satanist. So for the first 6 months, I was being groomed by being told I had to give targets. I was going to make this production company. I was going to make my family multi-millionaires. I would never have to worry about anything again. And we was making this production company so that I could help girls to show them how to make their own websites. I was sold this dream. We even made leaflets and everything. And yeah, I didn't realise at the time, but Becky had been told that if you bring on other girls, you can stop working. And these other targets will get brought in by other girls. I was the other girl. There was also other girls that were brought in off the streets, because he would like girls that were dependent upon drugs, and he knew that I was dependent upon cocaine. So over the first 6 months, it was very much like, you have these targets, you hit them, nice little maybe 24-hour session, sleep deprived, bit of a slap, you know, nothing major what people would think. And then after 6 months, my guy starts going on really weird, starts saying he's the devil, he owns my soul, he's a member of a cult called the Illuminati. I had to listen to songs backwards. I had to look up who the Illuminati were. I had to be initiated. So I had to be broken down more, to the point of where the sleep deprivation was like 3, 4, 5 days. Then the torture would come. The continuous rape, things like urinating in my mouth, forcing me to swallow it. constantly pushing things like incest and bestiality into my brain, making out that if I judged someone who was a paedophile, I needed to get ready for his people. So I needed to know that that was normal. And if I was a bad girl, I would get punished. And the punishment, you know, would be a lot of abuse, physical, sexual. You know, I would be forced to go down on him for 5-6 hours. You know, I remember being sat there once and him, like, there was another girl there and he was smacking me and he was smacking her and he was like, I'm doing this in the name of Lucifer. Like, this guy, you know, made me get branded and have 666 put on my finger. This guy was a fucking psycho, narcissistic, sociopathic, gaslighting psychopath. And he even lied about saying he was someone called Paul Ferris. He used to say that he knew my mum and dad, like, and these cult procedures is how they work, like, and this is what people need to understand, like, cults are very real. There's things called the Jim Jones, the Nixium cult, the Manson cult, MK Ultra, like, these things are very, very real, and mind control is very, very real, and that is exactly what he did. He was the person that made me think I was the chosen one and I was the one who had to pass all these tests. And, you know, and if I was lying, he would always know. You know, I had to fucking degrade myself to £50 an hour bareback to make sure I could get his money, because sometimes he'd ask for £5 a week and I just didn't ever not get the money. People have asked me before, did you get the money? I was like, I always got the money. I always made sure I got the money, because if not, it would have been my family that would have been killed. And it was sad because he would use me to be like, I'd be like to people, oh, he's my friend, he's my manager, he's going to make us a millionaire. I still thought in my head that this story was real the whole time, that I was going to end up, you know, being able to look after my family. And for 3 years I was there, and I was just so lucky because at the end of the 3 years I ended up meeting my partner, and she was the first person to make me think for myself. I didn't fucking even know. I was basically a yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir kind of girl before I met Ma. And it was mad. He'd broken me down so much to think that what I was going through was normal. I accepted my fate. I thought that everything that was happening, it was because of who I was, because I deserved it. And she was the first person to love me. I thought I was unlovable. I thought I was a degenerate. He made me think that I was a piece of shit. 2012 was when I got away, and that was when we had the court case. He got found guilty of trafficking me and a minor. He got found guilty of raping the minor as well. And we got him put in prison for 8.5 years. He got out in good behaviour on 4. So in 2016, we got him sent down, and it was like a roller coaster of healing after that. The first thing I did was go back to the industry. I didn't know any different, so I went back on Babe Station, I went back on webcam and did what I knew. From the ages of 17, I was making money that way. But it wasn't long before I started to realise that this wasn't the right way for me. I then started to work for the biggest human rights organisation in the world. I started to realise what human rights were, and that was when things started to shift for me. And now I stand in front of you not as a victim, but as a survivor. I have done so much work on myself to be able to stand here in front of you. Neuroscience, personal development. I now own a superfoods company. I look after myself, mind, body and soul. I know instead of shotting drugs, let's shot some CMOS, you know. I have turned my life around to realize that I am not a number. I've been able to stop FGM, child marriage. I've been able to stand up for prisoners of conscience. I've raised I've got to have raised 6 figures now for charities, fundraising. I have been able to set up my own social enterprise that now goes into the youth and the criminal justice sector to prevent exploitation and improve mental well-being. I was able to work with the NHS, councils, schools, youth clubs. I have been able to get my story heard by over 1 million people now. I've been on the BBC. I have now used my voice for the voiceless. My message for anyone who has suffered any kind of abuse in your life, I want you to know that it's not because of you. These perpetrators depend on vulnerable, naive people. And that is why we have to see ourselves as survivors, because if we see ourselves as victims, we act that way. I have seen myself as a survivor and I have been able to turn my life around. Like I said, I've been ballsy from day, mate, and he tried to break me and he couldn't, and that's why I still stand in front of you today as Samantha Browne.